y'all, it's Lauren. Today I will be reviewing The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. I won this book for free at Barnes & Noble B-Fest, which was all teen YA themed this year, so I won the most in trivia, so I won an advanced reader copy. So I read this book back in June. Floored. I read this book so quickly, and I do not read books quickly. I start a book, I like a book, I get distracted and pick up a new book, then fall in love with that book, finish that, and then the first book is left wondering what it did wrong and if I ever loved it and why didn't we go to readers therapy more often. I hadn't read everything previously, so I didn't know what y'all saw in Nicola Yoon's longing and love and humor and intelligence and wit of YA contemporary. And contemporary is not usually my first choice when there's like dragons and magic and love triangles to read about, but I love this contemporary so much. The Sun is Also a Star is about two people who would never ever met, their paths would have never crossed had not all these very specific circumstances and situations led up to them being able to finally meet. Has a book ever been more me? Do I not always talk about how things in my life led up to this, led up to that, to lead me to where I am now? That if I didn't love Taylor Swift, I wouldn't have a Taylor Swift blog, which means I wouldn't have a selection blog, which means I would not have gotten an arc of the Cyber, which means I would not be on BookTube. Is a book ever more me? So really, this book just hit me in all the feels. I tabbed it up quite a bit when I did a reread. I read out, orange started out as like foreshadowing and connected moments, and pink were lines I loved, and then I read out of both colors so that everything at the end is all just green. But this big one's my favorite. Save me from the nice and sincere boys who feel things too deeply. Save me from myself when I feel things too deeply. At some points I was Daniel, like a dreamer and believing in love, and other times I was Natasha, so adamantly against being passionate, and it was crazy how I was both characters at once. This book follows Natasha, a 17-year-old who lives in Brooklyn, who loves space and science and things you can measure and quantify, who's also an undocumented immigrant. I have never read a book with an undocumented immigrant until this book. Her family is from Jamaica, and when they came on their travel visa, they just stayed and never left. She's been an illegal immigrant for 9 years, struggling with who she can tell and who she can trust, and hiding the fact that her social security number is a fake one that her mother bought as she saved up for, so it would be a good one that would pass all the tests. Her father is directly responsible for her deportation, and that plays a lot into their father-daughter relationship throughout the book. So today, Natasha is in Manhattan seeing what she could possibly do about their situation. Daniel, on the other hand, is the youngest son of 2 Korean immigrants who grew up in South Korea with very little, were very poor, and want a better life and want the American dream for their sons, which basically means going to Harvard, becoming a doctor, marrying a Korean girl, and providing for their parents. Daniel's more of a dreamer and a poet though, and though everyone keeps telling him you can't make a career off poetry, that's what he wants to do, but he's fulfilling his parents' wishes anyways. Family is such a huge part of this book, and your culture and your heritage and where you come from and how that impacts your internal family and also how you interact with the rest of the world. Daniel is on his way to a haircut and then an interview with Yale, because he put his foot down to best school Harvard and he's gonna go to second best school instead, when he meets Natasha. This book is told in alternating point of views with brief little clips about fate, about some of their parents, about other external secondary and tertiary characters, and all of them are entitled history. So like one about Daniel's father is a father's history, and one of them is a regretful history, and so much of it is what led them to where they are now. So this book tells the past, present, and future. I learned so much about modern immigration and family life from cultures different from my own, about biracial relationships and how those are looked upon in the world. I've only read a handful of books with biracial relationships, and there's a lot about the universe, what leads to what, and is there such a thing as coincidence or just happenstance. I truly cannot recommend this book enough. It's just a wonderful own voices book of a Jamaican American author writing about a Jamaican immigrant's experience. There were at times it felt a little too simple to read, like it was very complicated in the overall story. Some of the smaller themes seemed a little dry, I suppose. I teared up a little reading it the first time, not so much the second time. I'm heartless apparently because I don't cry during books. But I made a lot of like emotional feeling noises, like moments that hit me, moments where I understood the foreshadowing and the connections in between the mastery that is this book of how interconnected all these parts are. I'm not a contemporary reader and I adored this, and it probably makes me want to go to New York City much more than Taylor Swift's Welcome to New York song does. I highly adore it. Definitely a recommended book for me. Yeah. Well, my name's Laura. This has been Bookies and Cookies. I post videos on Sundays and Thursdays, and I love each and every one of you, and I hope you never forget it, that you are loved. And remember that there should be more poetry about stars, because the sun is also a star. Thanks, guys. This book comes out November 1st, which is either tomorrow or today, depending on when I'm uploading and editing this, because you gotta love last-minute procrastination.